synopsis on Amazon, like when they return. So many questions pop out of my mind, like um, who are they? So where did they come from? And also what happens when they return. So let's get it on. Can you tell me more about yourself?
Um, this is my first time to actually try and publish a book. Luckily, I found a publisher who was willing to accommodate the contents of the book, because I've been writing for a long while, for a long time, but I haven't really published anything yet. Um, I think I've written a bit about myself in the bio section of the book, but to add a few, well, I'm from the Philippines. That's one. And currently I've only just begun really writing fiction this last 2019. So basically, I'm still new to the writing industry, to the creative industry. But ever since I was in high school, it's been a long um dream to actually publish a book. So I can relate to a lot of writers out there who have that lifelong desire to put something out there. So yeah, I'm just like everybody else, but you need to take a step forward to make something happen. So that's something just a bit about myself. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, but this is the first time that I actually uh, put something out there through a publisher.
That's great to know. So, for when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer?
When I was in high school, as far as I was, I think a second year high school, I was a teenager when I realized that I wanted to be a writer. So um, I did start writing fan fiction. I think a lot of writers started writing fan fiction because they wanted to copy their the way that their idols, their favorite authors
Mm-mm.
have written. So that's one. That's how I started, and then eventually I somehow rooted from that habit and started to develop my own stuff when I was in high school. And I did try to follow that traditional route. When you want to be a writer, you go to college, you apply for a
Mm.
degree in
Mhm.
writing literature. But I didn't really take that route. I took a different route when I was in college. So I didn't. There was a pause when I was pursuing the ha-
Mm.
the hobby or writing itself. So there was a pause in I think a decade pause when I went in terms of writing, and I only started to reactivate the habit and the desire to really write just this 2019, and that flourished since then.
So I've been there also. Like when you're in college, you get very busy, and at times you forgot to write na. So aside from fan fiction, and also when they return, it's fantasy, right? Myth.
Yes, it's more magical
Mhm.
realism.
Okay. So do you write in any particular genre? If if so, then what and why?
As of the moment, since I'm on that um, verge of rediscovering the writing itself, I'm still in magical realism. I'm studying the art, the form, and how to best express what I want through this particular genre, because I really like how social realities are portrayed in this genre. So I'm really yes, I'm really I'm discovering the best way on how to utilize this genre
Mm,
more.
good to know. So, for the next question, how and where do you come up the idea in making the book and writing when they return?
I think in I started writing that 2019. At first, it was supposed to be like a superhero kind of genre, but then I realized that um I think there was a desire to use the novel itself to portray real life situations
Mm-hmm.
in particular in the country, especially that I wrote that 2019 to 2020, so we were under a pandemic. And if you want to uh, being a writer, we have that kind of a process when um, we create stuff based on what we experience. So during that time, during pandemic, of course, we were in quarantine, and I think the best vehicle where I got the idea about the story was what was really happening that time. What was happening in the news? What was I experiencing as a person looking for work at that time. So
Mm-hmm.
everything about the story is taken from social context from 2019 to 2020 and history about um, of the Philippines, basically
Mm-hmm.
history, and some of the magical context, since it's magical realism, came from my interest in our culture and popularizing it today.
Wow, that is very deep. So regarding when they return, who is your favorite character in that book that you made?
My favorite character is, I think I'm a bit torn between Arnold. Arnold is a young I don't want to put any spoilers, but he's a youth,
Mm-hmm.
part of the youth, and he's a very courageous person, very active in society. So he's one of my favorite, and I think in the story it's going to reflect because he lives on to up to the end. So he's
Uh,
one of my favorite. Yes,
okay. So, what do you think makes a good story as a writer?
I think it's the ability to connect to people and tell their story, represent the people who you want to represent in your writing in such a way that they're not only going to relate to it, but they're only going to also going to how they can also express themselves and how they can use what they've learned in in real life, basically how they can relate to it as people as well.
I see. So, how did you plan out your time while writing when they return? So,
Actually, it's there wasn't really a ground plan, or
oh,
I think it's one of the problem of many writers who are beginning in the craft, because you try to go through the general process, like there's this outlining and then writing, then editing,
mm-hmm,
revising. If that were only the case, I wrote, I think, for a year. I
mm-hmm.
followed that process for a year, but then after another year, 2020, I ran through everything else and I changed more than half of it. So I would say I wrote that for more than 2 years, about around 2 years, because of the editing and the revising are actually bloodier than the writing process itself. So I think there's a lot of editing and revising that I've done.
Yes, agreed. So, writing the story is one, but also revising and editing it is a lot harder to completing the manuscript. So, can you describe your book in one word?
Magical.
Okay, I see. So, next question is, what do you think, aside from editing, revising, what do you think is the most challenging phase in the writing process from the start till end until publishing the book? your complete manuscript into a physical book?
It's it's giving life to your characters. I mean, your characters, they're going to be the muse of the entire story. So they have to be believable. They have to have their own personality in such a way that you don't they don't embody your personality. So you're creating a whole a different set of people. So I think it's the characters, personality of the characters, the hardest.
Okay. So, what were your key learnings during your writing process?
It's still following the general process
Mm,
of writing. Although it's difficult to organize your thoughts and follow
mm,
a game plan. A game plan is still the number one thing that you should have in mind, because it'll be easier to for the editing, for the revising. Once you have that format in your mind, in your habit, you have that habit of being organized in writing as well.
mhm. So, most writers as of today like to write what they just have in mind without any, like for an example, outline. So,
Mhm.
that can be hard for them. And also, for the next question, what do you like to do when you are not writing? Like, what are your hobbies aside from writing?
If it were a normal situation, like we weren't in a quarantine, I think I definitely like going out with friends
Mm-hmm.
and just hanging around, going out with friends, visiting places. I like traveling, but I like coming back after going home, like only
Mm-hmm.
a 1 day travel, like that. Aside from that, I definitely like reading. It's one of the inspiration actually to write is most of the time I do read.
Oh, I see. So traveling is one of the people's most wanted to-do list after
Yes.
this pandemic, because it's like we're at home all of the time. So, what advice will you give to those aspiring writers aiming to be a published one like you?
Um, it's to I think there are three major things I'd like to like to
Mm-hmm.
share. It's very simple actually. First is of course is to follow the general rule. I think writing is a craft, but it's also a skill. So you need to develop that and follow the general process. Attend workshops. If you can't attend workshops, read. Learn from the experience of other writers. Second is to find your center, or find how you best write as a person, because we're not uh, even though we're in the same industry, we don't have the same what do you call it, environment on how we can best work as a writer. So it's also being an finding your individualized method on how you can creatively write. And third is to always center your writing in the purpose on what you want to put out there, because it's what people will be retaining about you as a writer and about your craft. So yeah, it's important to have that purpose in your mind. And
Wow.
that's it.
Thank you for that. So, without spoiling when they return.
When they return is, well, it's a story about, not it's not a story about finding yourself. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a story about redeeming yourself. It's a story about looking deeper into what we see every day, as people around us, how we interpret our society, or how we interpret what's going on. And what we put out there, I mean, our actions, any of our actions always have a corresponding backlash or corresponding return to us. So when the return is basically about what are the things or the events that are happening right now, and what have happened that hasn't really changed. That's the best way that I can describe it without spoiling the plot.
I understand. So thank you for that. as an author, after this one, what are your future plans?
Aside from surviving the pandemic, I also plan to, for since I began writing, so I plan to continue this. I'm currently working on a series of short stories. I'm focusing more on short stories so that it can be
Mhm.
easier to read for a lot of the readers, because I've noticed that a lot a lot of readers like reading shorter stories nowadays. So that's one I'm exploring aside from surviving. And yeah.
Oh, wow. That's what you want to your reader to know.
So far, aside from, so
Mhm.
planning to, I think I've also asked for physical books from the publisher itself. So if you guys want to order the book directly from me, of course, for those in the Philippines, I can, I think I can ship from Luzon to Mindanao. So ayun, I'm just a direct message away. So that's it. That's it. That's everything I can say.
Okay, so finally, how was your overall experience with OKAuto Publishing?
The process was very easy. That's one. I think it's important for every writer to have that experience. That's that the ease of the process, because that's what we're mostly afraid of. How is the process? How is the promotion of the book and everything? So it's one of the best things in working in with the publisher. It's a very easy process, very responsive, and the fact that they have this diverse pool of writers, a diverse set of stories that everyone can read. It's also very important, especially for the global audience.
Hmm. So thank you so much for that. And also, as a fellow Filipino, I really am proud that to have your book out there in an international setting because it portrays. I've read a synopsis, so it portrays or it features the Philippines, even though it's in English language. You use the places of the Philippines. So I also am excited for that. So thank you for this, Leosa. Have a great day. You take care.
Thank you. Take care. Stay safe.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thanks.